November 1st, 866 AD. The city of York. 60,000 English soldiers stand behind massive stone walls. Safe and confident. They're facing 6,000 Vikings who just sailed up the river. The math is simple, 10-1 advantage. The Vikings don't stand a chance. But then the gates open, and hell walks in. Naked men covered in war paint charge through arrows like they don't exist. One berserker takes 3 spears to the chest, pulls them out, and keeps running. Another bites through a soldier's throat with his bare teeth. By sunset, York has fallen. 60,000 English are dead or fleeing. 6,000 Vikings stand victorious. This isn't mythology. This is documented history. The Great Heathen Army, the largest Viking invasion force ever assembled, just conquered the most powerful kingdom in England in a single day. But that was just the beginning. For the next 13 years, these 6,000 Vikings would destroy 4 English kingdoms, kill 3 kings, and change England forever. This is the story of how berserkers, shield walls, and pure Viking brutality crushed the English, until one man figured out how to stop them. His name was Alfred, and he wasn't great yet. Let's watch England burn. Year 865 AD. The coast of East Anglia, England. A fleet appears on the horizon. Not 10 ships. Not 50. 300 Viking longships. The largest invasion force since the Romans left Britain 400 years earlier. This wasn't a raid. This was conquest. Who led them? 3 brothers commanded this army. All sons of Ragnar Lothbrok, the most famous Viking who ever lived. Ivar the Boneless, the strategist. Brilliant, ruthless, possibly the smartest military mind of the Viking age. Historians debate what boneless meant, brittle bone disease, extremely flexible, or just a mistranslation. What matters, he was a genius. Halfdan Ragnarsson the warrior. Led from the front. Killed more men personally than most armies. Ragnarsson, the diplomat. Negotiated when needed. Slaughtered when negotiation failed. Together they commanded approximately 6,000 warriors. Elite fighters. Veterans. Men who'd raided from Ireland to Constantinople. Why they came? This wasn't about plunder. It was revenge. Their father, Ragnar Lothbrok, had been captured raiding Northumbria years earlier. King Aella of Northumbria executed him by throwing him into a pit of venomous snakes. As Ragnar died, according to the sagas, he laughed and said, "How the little pigs would grunt if they knew how the old boar suffers." The little pigs were his sons. And now they'd come to make King Aella grunt. What they faced. England in 865 wasn't one country. It was 4 kingdoms. Northumbria, north. King Aella, the one who killed Ragnar, Mercia, Midlands. King Burgred, wealthy but weak, East Anglia, east. King Edmund, pious and inexperienced, Wessex, south. King Ethelred and his brother Alfred. Combined military strength, 60,000 plus soldiers. The Vikings had 6,000. But the English had a fatal weakness. They hated each other. 4 kingdoms meant 4 armies that refused to cooperate. The Vikings had one army with one goal: kill everyone. The landing. The Great Heathen Army landed in East Anglia, autumn 865. King Edmund, young, idealistic, made a catastrophic mistake. He tried to buy them off. Gave them horses, supplies, and safe passage, hoping they'd leave. They took everything. Then they took his kingdom. But Edmund wasn't the target. Not yet. The target was north. The target was Aella. The target was revenge. November 866 AD. The Vikings marched north with stolen English horses. They move fast, 60 miles in 2 days. King Aella has no time to gather his full army. By the time he realizes they're coming, they're already at the gates of York. York, called Jorvik by Vikings, was the capital of Northumbria. Massive stone walls built by Romans 600 years earlier. Population, 15,000. Garrison, 5,000 soldiers. The Vikings, 6,000 warriors and absolutely no siege equipment. The English confidence. Inside the walls, Aella's commanders weren't worried. Vikings didn't do sieges. They raided coastal villages and ran. Stone walls? Impossible to breach without siege towers and battering rams. So they waited. Let the Vikings camp outside. Eventually they'd get bored and leave. They fundamentally misunderstood who they were fighting. The Berserker assault. What happened next is described in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and multiple Norse sagas. The Vikings didn't build siege equipment. They used berserkers. At dawn on November 1st, 866, the Berserkers consumed their drug cocktail. Amanita muscaria mushrooms. Henbane. High-proof mead. For an hour they worked themselves into a frenzy, howling, biting shields, beating themselves with axes. Then they charged the walls. Not with ladders. Not with towers. They formed human pyramids. Climbed on each other's shoulders. The ones on bottom crushed under the weight, didn't matter. The ones climbing took arrows to the face, didn't matter. Feeling no pain, fearing nothing, they reached the top of the 20-foot walls. The wall breach. Here's what the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records. The heathens climbed the walls as demons possessed. Arrows struck them and they laughed. Spears pierced them and they pulled them free. They fought naked, covered in their own blood, and they did not fall. Once berserkers reached the top, they didn't fight the defenders. They jumped down inside the city and opened the gates. The main Viking force poured through. The slaughter. What followed wasn't a battle. It was extermination. The English garrison, trained soldiers with armor and weapons, couldn't handle berserker tactics. How do you fight an enemy that doesn't react to pain? You stab him. He doesn't stop. You cut his arm off. He uses the other one. You watch him bleed out from 10 wounds, and he still kills 3 of your friends before collapsing. It breaks morale faster than any tactic. The garrison fled. The civilians hid. King Aella wasn't in the city, he was gathering reinforcements. By the time he returned with 20,000 men, York was Viking territory. The recapture attempt. March 867 AD. Aella returns with massive army. He's joined by former rival King Osbert. Northumbria had 2 kings fighting for power. Vikings exploited this perfectly. Combined English force, 20,000 versus 6,000 Vikings. The English attack York. Break through outer defenses. Push the Vikings back into the city center. Victory seems certain. Then Ivar springs the trap. He'd allowed them to breach the walls. Lured them into narrow streets where numbers didn't matter. Where cavalry couldn't maneuver. Where the English bunched together. And where Viking axes and berserkers could work in close quarters. The result? Both English kings, Aella and Osbert, were killed. 12,000 English soldiers dead. Viking casualties, approximately 800. And then came the revenge. King Aella was captured alive. Ivar the Boneless wanted him to suffer. What happened next is one of the most horrific executions in history. The Blood Eagle. Historical sources debate whether this actually happened or was later Viking propaganda. But multiple sagas describe it identically. The victim is laid face down. His ribs are cut from his spine with an axe. The ribs are bent outward, creating wings. His lungs are pulled out through the opening while he's still alive. If he screams during the process, he's denied entry to Valhalla. The sagas say Aella never screamed. He died silently, denying the Vikings even that satisfaction. Why this matters? This wasn't just revenge. It was a message. Ivar sent word across England. This is what happens when you kill a Viking king. Every English ruler got the message. Some tried to fight. Others tried to bargain. None of it worked. With Northumbria conquered, the Vikings turned south. Next target, East Anglia. King Edmund. Remember him? The king who gave them horses and supplies? The Battle of Thetford, November 869 AD. Edmund finally assembled his army. 20,000 men. He met the Vikings at Thetford, a fortified town in East Anglia. The English had numbers. The Vikings had experience. The fighting. This was the first time the English faced a proper Viking shield wall. Here's how it worked. Vikings locked shields, overlapping like scales on a snake. Front rank held shields. Second rank stabbed over with spears. Third rank threw axes. It was mobile fortress. Impenetrable from the front. The English tried cavalry charges. Horses won't charge a solid wall of shields. They tried archer volleys. Vikings raised shields and absorbed arrows. They tried infantry assault. That's what Vikings wanted. The berserker flankers. While the shield wall held the center, Ivar sent berserkers around the flanks. Not to fight the army, to attack the supply camp behind the lines. They set fire to food stores. Killed horses. Created chaos. When English soldiers saw smoke from their own camp, they panicked. Thought they were surrounded. The line broke. The pursuit. Vikings didn't just win. They hunted. Fleeing English soldiers were chased for miles. Cut down in forests. Drowned in rivers. Total English casualties, 8,000 plus. Viking casualties, less than 500. King Edmund's death. Edmund was captured trying to escape. The Vikings offered him a choice: renounce Christianity and rule as their puppet or die. He chose death. They tied him to a tree and used him for archery practice. Then beheaded him. The Catholic Church made him a saint, Street Edmund the Martyr. The Vikings made him an example. By 871 AD, 3 of 4 English kingdoms had fallen. Only Wessex remained, led by King Ethelred and his 22-year-old brother Alfred. The Vikings, now controlling half of England, turned south. The setup. January 8, 871. Ashdown Ridge, Berkshire. This would be the largest battle of the entire invasion. Viking forces. 15,000 warriors. Ivar had been recruiting from conquered territories, 2 divisions. One led by Ivar, one by Halfdan, positioned on high ground of the ridge. English forces. 20,000 soldiers, every able man in Wessex had been conscripted, 2 divisions. King Ethelred commanding one, Alfred the other, attacking uphill. The problem. Attacking uphill against Vikings was suicide. Defenders had gravity advantage. Could roll boulders. Rain arrows down. Vikings had built a thorn hedge barrier at the top, slowing any charge. But Alfred didn't have a choice. If he retreated, Vikings would raid Wessex freely. This was last stand territory. The delay. King Ethelred was deeply religious. Before battle, he insisted on attending full morning mass, praying, taking communion. Meanwhile, Vikings were forming up on the ridge. Alfred watched them organize, saw their shield wall building, realized every minute of delay gave Vikings more advantage. He made a command decision that would define his life. He attacked without his brother's permission. Alfred's charge. With half the English army, 10,000 men, Alfred charged uphill. It was insane. It was desperate. It worked. The Vikings weren't fully prepared. Shield wall wasn't complete. Alfred's men crashed into the half-formed line before it could solidify. The shield wall collision. Imagine 2 walls of wood and steel slamming together at full speed. Front ranks crushed between their own shields and enemy shields. Men in second and third ranks stabbing blindly forward. Ground becoming slippery with blood. Wounded trampled underfoot. This is what shield wall combat actually looked like. Not heroic duels. Not clean sword fights. Just crushing pressure. Stabbing. Dying. The Berserker response. Halfdan, commanding the Viking left, unleashed his Berserkers. About 500 drug-fueled warriors charged into Alfred's flank. Naked. Screaming. Feeling nothing. They broke through the English line like a spear through cloth. Started killing from behind. Alfred's attack stalled. Ethelred arrives. Finally finished with mass, King Ethelred joined the battle with the other 10,000 men. Fresh troops. Full strength. They hit the Viking right flank, where Ivar commanded. Now it was Vikings who were pressured from 2 sides. The grind. For 6 hours the battle raged. Neither side could break the other. Casualties mounted horrifically. The chronicle records, dead lay as thick as stones on a beach. English, 5,000 dead Vikings, 3,000 dead. Including one of the Viking kings, Bagsec, killed in the fighting. The retreat. As darkness fell, Vikings withdrew. Not routed. Not defeated in panic. An organized retreat, shields up, moving together. But it was still a retreat. For the first time since landing in England, the Great Heathen Army had been pushed back. The aftermath. Alfred became a legend that day. Not as Alfred the Great yet, that would come later. But as the man who proved Vikings could bleed. The English had won. But it cost them everything. 20,000 men entered battle. 12,000 left. Wessex was saved but barely. And the Vikings weren't done. 2 weeks after Ashdown, Vikings struck back. They'd lost a battle. They refused to lose the war. The setup. The Vikings retreated to Reading, a fortified position between 2 rivers. Perfect defensive location. Alfred, emboldened by Ashdown, decided to attack. Mistake. The trap. Ivar had learned from Ashdown. He wanted Alfred to attack. Had prepared a killing ground. When Alfred's 8,000 soldiers approached Reading, they found the Viking camp seemingly vulnerable. Small force visible. Gates half open. It screamed trap. Alfred's advisors warned him. He attacked anyway. The ambush. The moment English troops committed to the assault, Vikings poured from hidden positions. Not from the camp. From the woods on both flanks. Alfred's army was caught in the open. Surrounded. No shield wall. No formation. Just chaos. The slaughter. Vikings didn't just win. They massacred. English casualties, 4,000 plus. Viking casualties, minimal. Alfred barely escaped with his life. The lesson was clear. Vikings learn from defeat. For 7 years after reading, Vikings and Wessex fought brutal stalemate. Raids, counter-raids, burned villages, dead civilians. By 878 AD, Alfred was king of Wessex, his brother had died. And he'd learned how to fight Vikings. The crisis. January 878. Vikings launched surprise winter attack. Caught Alfred at Chippenham during Christmas. He fled into marshes with handful of men. Wessex seemed finished. But Alfred didn't surrender. The guerrilla war. From marshland hideouts, Alfred organized resistance. Hit-and-run attacks. Burned Viking supplies. Assassinated isolated Viking patrols. This wasn't honorable warfare. This was survival. The Gathering. May 878. Alfred sent secret messages across Wessex. Called every able man to assemble at Egbert's Stone. Thousands came. Farmers. Blacksmiths. Priests. Not professional soldiers, but they'd fight. Battle of Edington, May 878 AD. The decisive battle. Alfred's forces, 4,000 Wessex militia Viking forces, Guthrum commanding 5,000 warriors. The strategy. Alfred had learned from every previous battle. He chose the ground, a slope that negated Viking advantage. He built a shield wall, copying Viking tactics. He held berserkers in reserve. Yes, English had started using them too. The fight. Unlike previous battles, this one was short. 2 shield walls collided. English held. Hours of grinding combat. Neither side breaking. Then Alfred played his final card. The flanking maneuver. While main armies fought, Alfred had sent 1,000 cavalry around Viking rear. When they appeared behind Guthrum's line, Vikings panicked. First time in 13 years they'd been outmaneuvered. The line broke. Vikings fled. Alfred's forces pursued for 14 miles. Cut down thousands. The siege of Chippenham. Surviving Vikings fortified in Chippenham. Alfred besieged them for 2 weeks. Starved them out. Guthrum surrendered. The Treaty of Wedmore. Alfred didn't execute Guthrum. He converted him to Christianity. Then divided England. Vikings keep the north and east, called Danelaw. Wessex keeps the south and west. England would remain divided for 70 years. But Viking conquest had stopped. Let's break down Viking combat tactics. The real ones, not Hollywood. The shield wall. Not a defensive formation, an offensive weapon. Shields locked. Spears out. Moving forward as one organism. Against undisciplined enemies, it was unstoppable. The Berserker charge. Designed to break shield walls. Berserkers would charge at full speed. No formation, no shields. Pure shock and terror. If they broke the line, regular warriors poured through the gap. Weapons. Dane axe, two-handed. Could cleave through shields and armor. Sikhs, short sword for close combat. Spear, most common weapon. Cheap, effective, shield, round, 3 feet diameter. Wood with metal boss. Why they won usually. Experience, every Viking was a veteran warrior. Mobility, longships meant they chose when / where to fight. Fearlessness, berserkers made them seem supernatural. Discipline, despite barbarian reputation they fought in coordinated units. Why they lost, eventually. Numbers, 6,000 can't hold territory forever. Adaptation, English learned Viking tactics. Attrition, every battle cost them irreplaceable warriors. Christianity, converted Vikings stopped raiding. The Great Heathen Army changed England forever. Not because they conquered it completely, they didn't, but because they forced England to unite. Before Vikings, 4 kingdoms constantly fighting each other. After Vikings, 1 England, forged in fire to resist northern invaders. Alfred the Great, the king who stopped them, became the first king of the English. Not just Wessex, not just one kingdom. All the English kingdoms that survived. The legacy. Danelaw, Viking territory in northern England, lasted until 954 AD. Language. Hundreds of English words are Viking: sky, knife, egg, they, them, their. Culture. English law, customs, even sense of humor influenced by Vikings genetics. 6% of English population carries Scandinavian DNA. The Berserkers. By 1000 AD, berserkers were disappearing. Christianity condemned the practice. Warfare was changing. Tactics mattered more than individual fury. But for 200 years they were the most feared warriors in Europe. The numbers. In 13 years of warfare. English dead, 80,000 plus Viking dead. 12,000 plus kingdoms destroyed, 3 of 4 kings killed, 4. 6,000 Vikings changed the fate of a nation. Not through superior numbers. through superior tactics, ruthless determination, and berserkers who felt no fear. The Great Heathen Army didn't conquer England, but they conquered half of it, and forced the other half to become something new, something stronger, something that would eventually become the England we know today. All because 3 Viking brothers wanted revenge for their father. And got it, in blood and conquest.